I have been playing Duet Night Abyss since release, completely free to play, and I finally reached that point where I had to decide. On which character do I use my 1200 hoarded secret ladder queues? Is it Rebecca, with her map clearing minions, or Lynn, with her devastating firepower that everyone uses because of, well, her devastating firepower? Of course not! Why would I do something reasonable? I put it all into Randy. Yeah, that guy. The one who feels completely useless when you try him at Intron Tier 0. I brought him all the way to Intron Tier 6, level 70. And now I can finally tell you how that incredibly underwhelming ability kit performs almost maxed out. So if you have ever wondered whether he is actually worth building, here's my Randy spotlight. Enjoy! Before we get to the good part, let's start with his first ability and why you should almost never press it. It's called Legitimate Slackness. What it does is create a barrier in front of you while you take a comfortable seat and enjoy the show as a large shield absorbs incoming fire. When placing the barrier, an electro effect scaling with your defense deals a tiny amount of damage and knocks enemies back. You are also permanently surrounded by an aura scaling with ability range. The aura applies a debuff called Overwork Grudge. This effect supposedly reduces enemy attack by 15%. And it also works as a defense scaling damage over time effect. Damage-wise, arguably even less impressive than the barely noticeable initial hit. The barrier itself can absorb an amount of incoming damage equal to your max HP. You become completely immune to knockbacks and hit stuns. So nothing will move you from that comfortable chair. Absolutely nothing. Before we get into the details of how the Introns enhanced this skill, to put it very simply up front, Legitimate Slackness really sucks. I mean really. The game in its current state doesn't reward tactical play like that at all. It's about damage. That doesn't mean tactical abilities are useless, but characters need to do damage, or at least enhance the damage of your main character. And after that, we can talk about having a bit of utility. That's just how the game is designed currently. If you compare that barrier's dot damage to what a basic gun can do, you end up with the same kind of damage ratio that this basic gun has compared to the hellfire a fully built Lynn can unleash, though the fraction of a fraction of what is needed to actually beat a mission in high level. I have never once thought, man, I need my main character to stop doing any damage and trade that for the option to hide behind a non-spherical barrier, one that surely doesn't cover enough area to protect a defense objective from all sides, doesn't stop enemies from walking straight through it, and achieves nothing worth losing my entire action economy for. Okay. You can use it as a sort of very early game AFK clear. It doesn't scale very high though. I think after around level 40 to 50 enemies, it just stops doing anything to them. If you shorten your ability range so enemies die close enough inside your aura, you will automatically collect the energy and health refresh pickups from them while you sit in your chair. Though honestly, bringing Rebecca as AI companion and going AFK does the same job and keeps working well past level 50 enemies. No Randy build required. Anyway, what do the Introns actually do? Tier 1 allows the barrier to apply an additional Overwork Grudge instance to ranged attackers, stacking with the aura's existing application for a total of 2 stacks. So now, instead of applying almost no damage once, you can apply that almost non-existent damage twice. The stack is refreshed whenever they shoot at you. No, it doesn't create an extra damage instance when they fire. Don't get too excited. In addition to the usual Intron skill level bonus, you can also unlock a passive ability that extends your AFK tool potential. It automatically refreshes the barrier when it drops below 70% HP at the cost of some sanity and deals another initial hit in the process. It still won't make the ability work against higher level enemies, but at least you don't have to look up as often to refresh it against lower level ones. This ability feels as if it was made for an entirely different game, you know, more like for a PvP hero shooter, or like if the release was rushed before all of the skill testing was finished. I wish I could say this ability is 100% completely and utterly devoid of any use and be done with it, but there's one thing I have to mention about it. One thing that's actually cool and genuinely useful. When Randy is used as a companion, I have never seen him waste energy on the barrier. That means even the AI, which is normally completely unable to use the right ability at the right moment, is smart enough to never press that damn button. And that means, as a companion, he will only spam the other ability button, and this is so good. So yeah, this ability is basically an efficiency boost when Randy is used as a companion. Anyway, let's move on to the fun part. The other ability that Randy gets isn't useless, so that's something at least. Let's have a look. It's called Special Gift. When activated, you hover for a moment and see a ground marker appear where you can aim at. After a moment, or when you press any mouse button, you throw a thunder spear to that location. The game calls it a bespoke shield, but since I'm too stubborn to call a spear a shield, I will keep calling it a thunder spear, just so you know. The throwing range depends on your altitude, so when you are on ground level, it's only a few meters. Used after a double jump, it feels more like a missile barrage bombarding something in the distance, allowing you to turn into a skydiving spear missile turret. When the spear hits the ground, it creates an area effect called impact. Yeah, I know, very creative. The spear will then stick to the ground for quite a few seconds. You can have up to 3 spears stuck in the ground like that before they start to replace each other. The impact effect also triggers once every 3 seconds after that from every spear. It does 3 things in an area. First, it does damage, but only to enemy shields, not to their health. This damage scales with defense and is roughly 5 times as high as the damage from Overwork Grudge. So 5 times very tiny damage is not so extremely tiny damage anymore, but still not even mediocre damage in total. But it can do more. If you manage to get rid of the enemy shields, then it can paralyze everything it hits with every tick. Well, not everything. Champion enemies will just ignore that effect. But all the trash mobs, you know, the ones Rebecca and Lynn can just erase out of existence, yep, those are pretty much getting perma-stun locked. Also, you can overlap the shield spear damage auras from 3 spears, and 3 times almost mediocre damage pretty much equals mediocre damage, limited to shields. But hey, we are getting there. But that's not all. We and our allies are also getting ultra shields whenever that aura hits an ally or enemy, but never more than 1 instance per tick. Not much. On level 70, with around 1700 defense on skill rank 8, it's still only around 30 ultra shields per tick. It's not a lot. But if you stack 3 spears over time, that's actually quite a decent shield support. So we get mass crowd control and shield generation. Also, we get another passive that gives your companions a defense boost when also granting ultra shield. Cool. But as always, the introns are where things might get interesting. First, we get a buff to his maximum ultra shield capacity. It's over 9000 on level 70 with the tier 2 intron. Then we get the ability from the tier 4 intron to add the damage of our Overwork Grudge 1 time to our impact damage. The damage, not the dot or the attack debuff. How could we have lived without adding 1000 damage to the ability? And why is this only the damage effect from Overwork Grudge? When it's only the damage without anything else that makes Overwork Grudge, isn't that then just a tiny bit of extra damage? Okay, I will rephrase that intron for you. Impact does a bit of extra damage. Why make it complicated? And in addition to the default skill upgrade intron, we have tier 6. You know, after a really long journey of not getting anything outstanding. Okay, here's what it does. It adds damage to impact. No, only against shields. There is no extra condition. The damage is shield plus ultra shield times 1200%. Wait, what? 1 second. 2000 shields plus 9000 over shield is 11,000 times 12 equals 132,000 damage every 3 seconds. Times 3 spears, that's 132,000 DPS on level 70 as AoE on a support character. Okay, just to recap, so I don't get this wrong, we have multiple introns, defense scaling, ability power scaling, all calculated into our first ability. And after applying all of that, it does like 1,000 to 3,000 damage depending on stats every 2 seconds. Meanwhile, our tier 6 intron ability, which doesn't even scale with anything outside of our shields, does 132,000 damage per second with all spears active while having capped overshields. Yeah, I did know that they took inspiration from Warframe. I didn't know that they took inspiration from how Warframe is balanced. I guess that makes sense then? So where does this take us? We've got a support character with a couple of genuinely useful effects, crowd control and ultra shields, but without a meaningful first ability and more importantly, without contributing to the one thing the entire game revolves around from tier 1 to tier 5, doing or boosting damage. But once he reaches tier 6, he can solo farm 10 waves of a defense mission comfortably, without the objective ever taking much fire. At tier 5 he can't even scratch level 80 enemies, and then at tier 6, boom, they're gone. Is it superb damage? Probably not. The damage is okay for a support character, even strong, but it will scale horribly since there are absolutely no multipliers attached to it. We currently have no way to raise that 11,000 shield total to something like 15,000. It only scales with shield percent, and that applies only to the base shield value, not the overshield, so it's not much. I don't think he can reach the crazy heights of our current meta characters. To really compare, I would need to have more characters built and on level 80, which I don't, the price of being free to play. But all in all, ignore the first ability. If you build him, go straight for T6, or don't bother at all. But once you do, he's actually fun, surprisingly fun. So how do you actually build around that? Basically, the 3 stats that are useful are range, defense, and ability power. Range is extremely powerful here. It lets your 3 spear auras overlap easily, reach ranged attackers farther away from the group, and of course cover a wider area. Slotting range instead of defense or ability power in your demon wedges and weapon passives won't reduce your potential maximum damage from the tier 6 impact enhancement, but it will slow down your overshield build-up rate. Still, if the mission is long enough, you will reach the cap anyway. More range also helps against moving targets that are immune to your stunts. If the aura is too small, they will just walk right out of it. Defense and ability power are worth considering in fights against immobile boss-type enemies where you get hit a lot and can't reach your shield cap anyway. In those cases, defense or ability power might take priority over range. Like I said before, shield increases technically boost your damage a little, but they only affect your base shield, not your ultra shield. Range defines consistency, the rest only affects how fast you get there. If you want a tanky and extremely convenient support that's actually fun to play and does solid damage, and if you want to be that one person in the party who isn't just another Lynn, you could do much worse than Randy. I hope you enjoyed this character breakdown. If you did, a like and a sub are always appreciated, and I will see you in future guides.